David here with Figboot on pens. Today I have a pen for you from Montegrappa, and that pen is a model in their Fortuna collection called the Merry Skull. This pen was lent to me by the good folks at Kenbro Industries, who are the US distributors for Montegrappa, and it will be heading back to them after this review. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and the features of the Fortuna Merry Skull, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for. I'll show some measurements, size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. The pen arrives in this box, and inside we have a rather unique box. I think it's pretty cool. The top portion here is a woven carbon fiber material that looks pretty sharp. In the past, I've actually come very close to pulling the trigger on some pens that have integrated carbon fiber. I've always liked that look. The rest of the box has kind of like a soft rubbery-like material on it. The top actually kind of just pops up like that. Oh, there we go. And inside we have a user manual in both Italian and English. And then we have a couple of standard international ink cartridges, black, I believe. Then inside we have the Montegrappa logo here in that carbon fiber material, and a pen. Let me get this out here. This is the Montegrappa Fortuna Merry Skull. This is a metal pen. It's made from brass, and then there is a satin silver finish on the outside. It's also available in a copper version. And that the distinguishing feature of this pen are the skulls that are on both the cap and the barrel, but we'll be taking a closer look at those in a second. To begin with, let's take a look at the finial. On the end of the pen, it has some olive branches and says 1912, which is the year the company Montegrappa was founded. If you want to know a little more about the history of Montegrappa, you could check out my review of their American Dream pen, where I kind of go into the little more history of the company. Then we have the clip. And I really like the looks of this clip a great deal. It has the same satin silver finish as the rest of the pen, and I like that it's not just rounded, that it kind of has a ridge on top. And then the wheel here at the end. It's one of the sharper looking clips that I've reviewed lately. I just like it. Now, I did find the clip on this specific pen to be a bit tight. The wheel does an okay job of helping it slip in and out of a pocket or a shirt like this, but when you clip it on, try to clip it on something thicker like a pen case or something like that, it can take a little bit of effort to utilize this clip. The cap starts off a little bit on the thinner side and then angles up to its widest point right here. The cap is kind of bulbous. Then it just angles down or tapers down very slowly, probably less than a millimeter, to the cap band. And that on the cap band, it's a separate piece, and on it is stamped Montegrappa. I like that the stamping is filled with black lacquer. It really makes the letters pop off the silver. There is a rounded step down to the barrel, which is straight until about this point. It's not very long before it starts to then taper down evenly toward the end of the barrel. And the end of the barrel has that satin silver finish and is rounded. Okay, let's take a look at the distinguishing feature of this pen, which are the skulls. More specifically, smiling skulls. On the barrel, we have skulls of varying sizes and orientations. It's tough to count them all, but I estimate there's somewhere between 80 and 100 skulls engraved on here. And as with the cap band, the engravings are then filled with black lacquer, which helps each skull really pop and stand out. And even the eyes have some interesting shading to them. Then on the cap, we have a grouping of smaller skulls in a mosaic, which actually create a larger skull. One thing I did notice was that on the barrel, all of the skulls are really clearly defined and there isn't much in the way of overlay, but on the cap, there are some areas where the skulls aren't as well defined and there's some large areas of lacquering. Now, this might just be an artistic design choice in order to give the larger skull some more definition. To be honest, I really didn't even notice it until I was looking at the design with a loop. Overall, I find the design to be very creative, and I like the concept of a larger skull being comprised of smaller ones. The cap unscrews to reveal this very interesting steel nib. This nib is a broad, but it's also available in fine and medium. I do like the octagonal filigree motif on the nib. The series of grooves here can lead to some cool looking nib creep. And I also like that the design is stamped, which I feel looks nicer than engraving on a nib. This is a broad nib, but I feel that this one here really, you can see we'll see in the writing sample, but really writes on the medium side of broad. And then here's a look at the plastic feed. Now, I'm really not fond of metal sections, and I typically prefer sloped sections, but surprisingly, this one works for me. Being angled without a curve or a stop on the end, it had me worried a bit that it would be a bit tough to maintain a grip, but that really wasn't the case for me at all. I find this grip to be comfortable, and I really have no issue at all maintaining a grip. I think the satin finish on here does a good job of creating something to hold on to. It had me worried that it'd be tough, but it wasn't the case. I find this grip to be comfortable and really, like I said, have no issues at all maintaining a good grip. The section actually transitions into a single thread. I really like the contrast in colors here. The thread is large and blocky and not sharp at all. This is a cartridge converter pen. Being made of metal, it's not a pen that you're going to want to eyedropper. It does take standard international cartridges, and a Montegrappa brand converter is included. Being made of brass, this pen does have a bit of heft to it, but I don't find it to be unwieldy at all. It's a good weight. I do find it to be comfortable in the hand, and that I like the fact that you can kind of feel the texture of the skulls on your hand here when you're writing with it. It kind of reminds you that this pen is a little bit different. The cap does post, and it does post securely, but the cap is a bit on the heavy side. By itself, the cap is 34 grams. To give you an idea of how heavy that is, that's about the same weight as 3 platinum preppies. So even though the pen does post, it does backweight the barrel, and so it's not something I would recommend. The Fortuna model wasn't one that initially spoke to me. I've seen it before, and I've debated purchasing one, like the Moscow Mule version. They have a number of versions of this model made of a variety of materials, and one they recently released is called the Blazer, which is where the material is torched in order to give it a very cool color pattern. I will say, though, that the more I used this pen, the more I liked it. While the skull motif isn't really my thing, I do have some co-workers who are in kind of the piratey thing, and they just loved it. They thought it was very, very cool. And I can appreciate that it's different. The broad nib is very, very nice on this pen and performs very well. So yeah, some pens you just love right out of the box. And for me, this one, it's one that really grew on me. And like I said, while the particular motif doesn't fit my style, having used this pen for a while, I will be more apt to purchase a version of this pen down the line for myself. Like I mentioned, that new Blazer one really looks interesting, but it's a little bit more expensive than this model. In regard to price, the cost for this particular model can vary, but you'll find them in the $300-ish range, which I feel is actually a very reasonable price for this pen. While it would be nice to have a gold nib at that price, in using this pen, at no point did I ever feel that when I'm using the steel nib that it was lacking in any way. So in the end, this pen has really won me over. I've enjoyed using it, and actually will hate to see it go back to Kenro. So, thanks again to Kenro Industries for the loan of this Montegrappa Fortuna Mary Skull. I appreciate it. So now it's time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Montegrappa Fortuna Mary Skull. Here it is in regard to, basically I picked out a bunch of other metal pens to compare it to. Here it is with the Keras Custom Ink. Then here it is with a Cross Peerless 125. And then here it is with a Diplomat Excellence A+, which I'll be reviewing here in a couple of weeks, one of their newer models. Then in regard to some other metal pens, we have another Diplomat, the Arrow. Then here it is with a Lamy All-Star. And then finally, a pen that was on loan to me from a user by the name of Ryan, who lent me one of the Monteverde Rodeo Drive pens, which actually has some really cool shading to it. You see it's kind of purple and red and blue. So we'll be taking a look at that in a few weeks. So here we go with the writing sample for the Montegrappa Fortuna Skull. Actually, it's the Mary Skull, but you get the idea. And this is a broad steel nib. And the ink that I'm using is something very special. It's called Colorverse Dark Energy. This is what the ink looks like. It's a really interesting kind of really dark red, kind of almost like a burgundy red. It looks somewhat similar to something like Lavender Pomegranate, or even something like Sailor Grenade. So it's somewhere in that same family. Now, Colorverse, you know what, I need to do a review on Colorverse inks because there's a lot to review when it comes to there, but just to show you a little something, they come in these very cool, uniquely shaped bottles, and whenever you purchase a bottle of Colorverse Energy ink, Dark Energy, or any of their inks, you actually get two bottles. You get this big one, and then you get the cutest little tiny bottle of ink as well. This one is 65 milliliters, and then this one is 15. And on some of their series, on some of their inks, you actually get two different colors that are kind of complementary to each other, or things along those lines. So, you know, the large one will be one color, and then the small one will be a different color, maybe a glistening ink or something like that. So later on down the line, I need to do a full review of one of the Colorverse inks because there's a lot that goes on with the packaging and other things that have a high cool factor to these inks that deserve more than just a mention in a pen review. But, okay, here we have the rest of the writing sample. I had mentioned before that this is a broad nib, but I really find it kind of writes on the medium side of broad. You can't get a bit of line variation out of here if you do push it. And in regard to ink flow, it's more like I said on a medium side, and it's decently wet. And in regard to reverse writing, it's actually very smooth and lays down a nice fine line. In regard to some fast writing, the feed and the nib have no problem in keeping up. I find this this broad nib to be very pleasant, and while I typically enjoy medium nibs, if I were to purchase this pen or another Fortuna, which quite possibly I might do in the near future, I might lean towards this broad nib because it is very generous and it's more on the medium side of broad. So there we have the Montegrappa Fortuna Mary Skull. Wanted to thank Kenro again for the loan of this pen, and that I appreciate it. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.